Technology has become essential to almost every aspect of our business operations. Organizations of all sizes are looking to new digital solutions to help them successfully navigate complex and often fast-changing environments. Today, it's not only about automating repetitive tasks or making our employees more productive. Newer technology solutions are providing more immersive ways to use applications, as well as far greater predictive capabilities. So what are some of the newer technologies, and how are they shaping the future of business? I'm Jane Singer, and thank you for joining me here on A Seat at the Table and being part of our global community of industry leaders. Today we have Slava Podmurnyi with us. Slava is co-founder and CEO at Visartech, a software development agency that helps companies create and implement advanced technologies to transform their business. During his 14 years of applying technologies to diverse business niches, he's worked on fintech solutions, metaverse platforms, SaaS products, and interactive apps. In this podcast, Slava will be talking about digital twin technology, a brand new way of business process transformation, how to align metaverse solutions with your specific business goals, and Web 3D technologies, the driving force to provide in-depth content perception. Even companies with state-of-the-art technology know that they need top talent to grow their business and drive success. That's why leading corporations and even smaller enterprises rely on AsiaNet consultants to help them fill key positions. Since 1988, AsiaNet has been working in partnership with its global clients to help them make the right strategic hires. They have a well-earned reputation for being able to fill even those difficult-to-fill positions. So if you need to recruit top talent, or you think you might be doing that soon, head on over to their website. That's asianetconsultants.com, asianetconsultants.com. I'll leave a link in the show notes. Now let's hear from Slava about the next big developments in technology. Thank you so much for joining us here on A Seat at the Table. I am personally interested in the topic that you talk about, and I think a lot of people listening to the show will be also, because a lot of our guests, a lot of our listeners are in supply chain, and certainly what you're talking about, which is digital twins, is now becoming something that is a lot more talked about and little by little applied in a greater number of supply chain scenarios, of course, as well as men.
Yeah, that's kind of true, probably because the world is becoming more and more digitalized. Yes, and I think it's just the demand of time somehow. So would be glad to share that information with your auditor and you personally.
So perhaps we can start. Give us a brief explanation of exactly what is a digital twin. It sounds sort of sci-fi for those of us who are not experts in the field. So maybe just give us that quick that overview of what exactly is a digital twin.
So basically, it's super simple. Imagine you have like a physical process, yes, and when you create like a digital counterpart of it, it's the digital twin. For example, you have a physical car, you create like a digital representation, so that's called digital twin. There's like a level of accuracy, how you create it, like which processes you would like to explain, which processes you would like to test. But I think like if we're talking about like more movie and sci-fi, it's closer to Matrix actually. So
yeah, I think that you do have that sense of things of being, I guess, a little bit alien, so to speak. But I think it's an interesting concept because I think one of the biggest challenges that people are increasingly facing in a wider range of scenarios is being able to predict potential problems and be able to test potential solutions in advance of the actual situation coming up. And I know that in engineering, they've been doing this for, I don't know, maybe decades, right? I couldn't put an exact date on it, but it's been used in engineering extensively. But now, as you're pointing out, technology is putting it within reach of people who are doing light industries, as well as other things such as medical and, well, a huge range of scenarios. Perhaps you could talk a little bit about.
Sure. So there are like two big, like I would say like niches. One is like entertainment, which is like huge for the digital twins. Another one is like more industrial, probably oriented. I mean, if we talk widely, even, for example, you have like a bank, yes, like a physical bank with people inside, I don't know, like coaches, cashier desk and ATMs. If you create like an online banking, basically it's also a digital twin, but maybe let's cover more, like interactive experiences, like metaverses, for example, or, like simulations. So if we're talking about more entertainment, I would say a lot of things happening in metaverses, or many companies try to create like metaverses. Now, and we don't want to live inside this virtual world, but we somehow want to utilize. We use computers, we use Zoom to communicate, and people. The same with metaverses. Yes, you can gather like some amount of people in one space and give them tasks, and it feels much more immersive.
Right.
Talking about more industrial utilizations, it's mostly connected to simulations of like a particular process. For example, you can have like a virtual laboratory and you can test some like collision tests. You can do this digitally, or you can do some physical events, simulate there.
So basically, when you're using a digital within industry, you would be able to simulate those events, and then you could also simulate how you might react to that event.
They're like, yes, I think like you can do the same thing as you do in real world, but of course it's much more cost efficient because you can run different on it, and you can do also automatic testing. For example, you have a digital twin of your factory, so you can simulate your processes, like how like assembling belt is happening, and also you can do some safety trainings for your employees, and so on, and you can do it numerous times. So it's automatization.
I can see how that would be incredibly not only time efficient, but the fact that if you are able to test solutions before rolling them out, you could potentially save not only the time and money, but also you would be able to determine if a solution might fail before having to actually, prior to that, right, you had to implement something, sometimes on the fly if there was a crisis, and then you didn't know if it would work. So this way, in a sense, you could say it's almost like a flight simulator for an aircraft. I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but it's the concept of having people trained for, disaster training, so to speak, in advance of it actually happening, and understanding if that solution that we're going to try to implement, well, how could that fail, so to speak, or maybe testing multiple solutions.
Yeah, like I think like one of like the biggest benefits that you can test the same scenario like many times, try to find the best possible solution. And in real world, you can imagine like creating like a copy of aircraft crashing somehow, measure the like all the sensors. It's like too expensive and just impossible probably, just to do more than one time. So there are a lot of benefits.
Oh, exactly. I mean, when you think about it, right, on even, on a cost side of things, on a safety side of things, it's huge. But even when you don't really have those very dramatic potential failures, just to be able to test alternative ways of doing things, which is probably what most companies would be applying it for, right? It wouldn't be in the case of an airplane crashing, but it could be a supply chain snafu, right? And if we're trying to move from here to here with these goods, what are potential other ways we could do it? And to be able to test it that way, again, could have an incredible time and money saving opportunities.
Yeah, that's definitely true. The thing, like we as humans, we perceive information visually. So it's not only, describing the process itself, not just because all those supply chains are like systems which process them and everything is going well. But if you can visualize it, for example, and like an operator or manager can see like the whole chain, and one chain will, highlight, and you see exactly the problem there. So, and you can find way like how to resupply that part, how to find a way around this problem. So definitely it helps a lot.
Now, getting a little technical, how do you go from that data side of things to a visual representation that you can actually interact with as a person, as a real person?
So as any software, like there are always like a few parts of it. The biggest part probably is invisible still to users. It's like
right.
Backend or the server where the whole logic is happening. Also, another part, like it's what we see, like iceberg. Yes, we see only top of it. It's the front end. So first of all, basically you create the backend, you create the logic because the like processes supposed to happen there. But at the same time, you want to make like great visualization so operator can see the result visually and can, like use it somehow, interact with it. And there are a few approaches. Recently, I would say like the biggest trend I see now in the market is web-based front ends. It looks like mobile, like just computer things are, I cannot say dying, yes, but they are declining, definitely.
Okay.
And the web part is growing because it's so much easier. Yes, you just open like a web link and no need to download things. You're instantly there. Just wait for loading time a little bit, and that's it. So people try probably to get closer to those technologies and receive them much more immersive. But when you do that, for example, there are a lot of obstacles from technical point of view. It's a little bit more complicated to present some sophisticated 3D graphics, for example, because I cannot say like not all digital twins use 3D graphics, yes, but a lot of them uses, and it may be some obstacles there.
Yeah, I can see how a typical computer might not have the capability to handle that in terms of RAM, in terms of computing speed and so forth. And then again, trying to do that all online, I imagine you would need a fairly good and stable bandwidth.
Yes, you're correct. But there are also like techniques to optimize that. And this is like where the magic happens. Yes. In general, in software development, it's all about optimization. You can use a brute force, yes, and like show everything at the same time. And it will not work even like on a supercomputers. But if you do it smart way, you can get the things working even on user level computers. Mostly for our clients, I would say we're targeting pretty simple computer setups, just like i5 processor and maybe 8 GB of RAM. So it's a very typical setup for every company. That's our goal. Make it widespread, the technology.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, to be able to optimize it for a machine with that level of specs is almost incredible, considering that it's hard to even get consumer level apps to run on anything without a quite high level of specs. Yeah. We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
That's probably our job, just to make it operational. And our company background is in computer games. At some point in my life, I decided like, oh my God, it's so boring to do like applications. Let's do games. And we started to do games. Maybe for a few years, we were totally concentrated on game development. But at some point, still, somehow we started to do digital twins at some point.
Right.
Like companies started to ask. It's also called serious games. Like when you do a game, but the game simulates some process. So basically, it's a digital twin. At that time, I don't remember the term, like a digital twin, but we were calling that serious games. And like in time, we started just to do digital twins. So the game development background helped us a lot in optimizations and also with user experience, because in games, it's all about user experience. Any game is supposed to be enjoyable, yes. Otherwise, there's no reason to play in it. And we're trying to apply those techniques to digital twins. So despite the fact it's a pure business, yes, it's not fun maybe. We try to make it a little bit fun for people who use it, just use those techniques. And I believe gamification is a crucial step, because in education, now you can see it's all about gamification. People perceive information better, maybe, and faster and more enjoyable, of course.
I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. And I hadn't thought about it that way before, but you're absolutely right. If you can, like you say, create serious games, which is combining the best of actual entertainment games with the ability to solve real life problems, right, that you might come up with in industry or elsewhere, you are able to get a lot better user engagement, right, to make it easier for people to get into it. Otherwise, there seems to be, when the user interface is not similar to what they're used to, it can be a challenge, right, to get people accustomed to using the system.
The big thing in digital twins, probably, if we're talking about, most of the time I talk about the front end side, of course, because it's the thing that people are able to see, and able
Right.
to perceive. The thing like in front end digital twins, it's a lot about user experience. You're right. The thing for people, sometimes it's complicated to use because we have another dimension. It's not just a website, yes, with the buttons and the controls. It's like most of the time, it's like there's like a third dimension, the depths, yes, and people should be able to easily behave with it. Many companies and many like startups do big mistakes. They try to make digital twin, but they try to use it. Imagine you have a metaverse, for example. Imagine you have a metaverse and you have a Zoom in the metaverse. And what you do, you just use Zoom inside the metaverse. It's kind of, I don't want to be rude, yes, but it's kind of stupid, yes, because you can just use Zoom without the metaverse. What's the reason
Right.
to use the metaverse? But if you have a metaverse, for example, it's great. You have 3D. So you can have 3D objects, so you can combine those 3D objects. You can perceive real scale of those objects. That's where you need the depth. And the whole experience somehow must be built around that principle that you need to build like immersive experience. You add more information, so their brains more information. It's not just a projection, it's like real thing.
It's an interesting way to look at it. It's that you can learn just so much, right, in a 2D environment. But once you get into a 3D environment for many different disciplines, you can actually be more participatory. You're not just learning, but you're actually learning by doing, so to speak. I don't know if I'm phrasing that correctly.
No, that's exactly correct. Like a huge part of our business connected with education, and I see like it's also a growing trend in education. Like educators just try to create like some sort of like digital twins, of classes, of libraries, of firms. We want to work in teams, and sometimes Zoom is just not enough. You want to see bodies around you, and somehow also collaborate with them, not just talk or see each other.
Now, talking about that, I think that's an interesting topic because we have, since the pandemic, seen a lot more companies working over Zoom than ever before. And one of the things that people feel was missing was that for certain tasks, right, for being in the same room together to collaborate. And like you're saying, of course, you can have everybody on Zoom and everybody has their own little box and can participate in the conversation. But it's less of a flow, shall we say, than if everybody is actually sitting there at their desk and you're in real life. Do you see that this kind of digital twin technology, right, is going to make it possible for people to take Zoom and make people really feel like we're all sitting in the same room? Or is that something that's really, really way down the road?
No, definitely. It's happening already. To be honest, like maybe 5 years ago, I thought like we would be inside virtual reality by now,
Right.
and using some sophisticated glasses. But that is like a little bit more complicated. People just don't want to buy like additional headset. We have mobile phones, and we don't want to buy another thing, and it's expensive, it's complicated, it's bulky. I don't know. So what I see now, like we use the same principle. The thing like we use it in 3D, and where we use it inside web browsers somehow more and more, so it's more accessible. It's still 3D, but it's on a flat screen because we all have flat screens already.
Right.
So probably that is why. But answering probably your question, definitely people they miss real communication. Sometimes it's so great to, hug your colleague or shake a hand, just do simple social, like gestures.
Right.
But even if you do it, for example, on a 3D, on a screen, you shake a hand, like your avatar shakes a hand to another avatar, it already feels differently. It's a different experience. It's not the same as real life. Totally not. I mean, real life is so much better. Go outside, go to the park, have a walk. It's so much better, yes. But if we cannot do that, or like we're separated by distance, it's better than just, a Zoom call, because it feels much more immersive for people. And, like people basically speaking, like social animals. And we need those traditions. We need, some special dance moves, just to perceive information better and understand people better. And I believe we're slowly but moving to that direction. I think like the final destination, definitely kind of a matrix experience when you'll be connected inside the environment, fully immersed there. And maybe live there. It sounds a little bit apocalyptic, yes, but we'll see. I mean, Zoom helped us to go through the pandemic, yes, save the economy in many senses. And it's just evolution, I think. So.
I think you're right. I think that nothing will really replace actually being there, but that the hybrid solutions will perhaps become a little more realistic. I mean, we've certainly seen that happen from what we had with video calls prior to the pandemic to the way video calls, which is basically what Zoom is, have definitely become more enhanced. So I think you're right. I think that there'll always be that need to be there in person when you possibly can. And I think if I'm hearing you correctly, that the digital twin technology is really where it's really finding traction and solving problems is more in industrial solutions, where you're talking about being able to have multiple different possibilities, where you're able to do more predicting potential problems and then testing potential solutions in advance of that actually occurring. So it's more focusing on that than on being able to enable people to collaborate around a table, so to speak.
Not only industrial application. There are many applications like, as I mentioned, education, for example, or even retail. Yes, like
right.
The ability to show your goods in 3D and help people to interact with them. For example, you can wear different clothes on your avatar and you can do some moves to see, how the clothes behaves when you do a particular dance, for example. The best possible ways to go to offline shop to people, check your clothes. But if you cannot do that, or you're too busy or you're far away, people try to make some sort of substitution. For example,
right.
Online shopping. Yes, 10, 15 years ago, online shops emerged a lot and people started buying online. But still, it's not so easy, to buy some things online. You're never sure about how it will look like on you.
I think you're right. I do see apps like that have tried to help people to get better fit for clothing. And then other things where you can visualize what the product would look like in your home or in your office. So it's interesting that you're bringing those use cases up.
But yeah, it's operational, it's existing. Any process you can imagine in real life, it is nowadays it's possible to digitize it because we have enough processor power to process high volume of data. We're able to process sophisticated 3D graphics even on low end right now. We are here, and I believe next maybe 5-10 years will be a huge time for the whole world is digitizing.
Now, just if you could briefly tell us a little bit about what you do at
Yeah, it's Visartech. We invented this name because it's vision, art, and technology. So we try to combine all those things to make the world a better place with technology. So what we do, basically we're a custom software development company. We develop custom solutions on demand. I would say if we're talking about industries, we do a lot of educations. We do sports simulations. We do just simulations. And we do a lot of social networking. We utilize the whole cycle. We do ecosystems for our clients. So it's back-end, front-end, client support, trying to give some pre-made packages and, this kind of concierge service experience.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think that increasingly companies are going to be looking towards this to see how they can solve problems more efficiently, train people better. And just in general, everybody's looking to be able to do things in a way, right, that saves time, that saves money, and that hopefully avoids disaster whenever possible.
That's true. I mean, every business tries to optimize their expenses and somehow attract more attention. So I see no other way here. It's happening.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with you on that. Well, Slava, thank you so much for joining us here on A Seat at the Table. It's just been a pleasure talking to you and being able to explore this very interesting concept of visual twins and where that concept is going and where the technology is evolving. How can people get in touch with you? Where can people find you?
I would say the best place probably is our website, visartech.com, and my LinkedIn. I think it's the usual way people reach me out.
Okay. Well, I will make sure that those links are in the show notes, and of course they'll be over on our podcast website.
Thank you, Jane, also for the opportunity to share my beliefs and share my thoughts about the technologies. It's always interesting to share more with people, and somehow evolve the world make it more digital and more optimized.
Thank you so much. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, AsiaNet Consultants. AsiaNet's a specialist in recruiting top talent in Asian markets. Since 1988, AsiaNet has been working in partnership with its global clients to help them make the right strategic hires. They have a well-earned reputation for being able to fill even those difficult-to-fill positions. Learn about how they can help you find the best talent by heading over to their website, asianetconsultants.com. That's asianetconsultants.com. I'll also leave a link in the show notes. Thank you for joining me here on A Seat at the Table. If you enjoyed this episode or learned something from it, I would love to hear about it. If you'd like to support the show, please hit the subscribe button. And if you can take a minute to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or other channels, that would be fabulous. Don't forget to check out our podcast website, seatpodcast.com. That's SEAT podcast.com. If there's something you'd like to share, ideas, suggestions, or comments, please feel free to reach out. I would love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining me and being part of our international community. I'm Jane Singer, and I'll see you in the next podcast episode.